For a second, let's imagine what history would have looked like once. Maratha King Chhatrapati Shivaji throwing the final blow to kill Bijapur Sultanate's General Afzal Khan in 1659, slashing through Khan with tiger's claw weapon, Wagh Nak, and down came Afzal Khan. The Battle of Pratapgarh, where the Marathas triumphed over the Adil Shahi forces and also enhanced Chhatrapati Shivaji's reputation as a military strategist. Shivaji's personal act of killing Afzal Khan with the Wagh Nak in present-day Satara, Maharashtra is a legendary episode symbolizing courage in defeating a significantly larger and a powerful adversary. All of this may not just be a story anymore, because coming to India from the London Museum is this Wagh Nak, believed to be the weapon to kill Shivaji. But before we start to cheer right away, Wagh Nak is returning to India only for 3 years, and that too on a loan to India, to mark the 35th year of Shivaji Maharaj's coronation as the Chhatrapati at Raigad Fort in 1674. India is the home where the battle took place, where Shivaji is revered, where Wagh Nak is supposed to be. Yet it is coming for only 3 years. How did the tiger's claw even reach the London Museum? Let me decode this for you. As per my research, this iconic claw was taken by the East India Company in 1820s. That's not surprising at all. This was the time when the entire subcontinent was brought under British control. According to historian Pandurang Balkwade of Pune's Bharat Itihas Sanshodhak Mandal, this Wagh Nak was kept in the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, housed within Satara's family residence. The artifact was somehow then received by a British agent, James Grant Duff, during the collapse of Peshwa rule in 1818. There is also another theory floated by Indrajit Sawant, a history researcher in Maharashtra's Kolhapur. According to him, the Wagh Nak made its way to the museum after it was gifted by Pratap Singh Maharaj, the fifth and the last Chhatrapati, and that was given to a British agent. But a disclaimer here for you. British Empire were rulers, remember, dominating over us with brutality. So there is no clarity if transfer of items were done willingly, or most likely to try and keep British government agents in good books so they do not resort to brutal measures against Indians. According to the Victoria and Albert Museum, where the Wagh Nak is, the weapon was given to the East India Company officer by Shivaji Maharaj's descendants. Duff returned to England with the Wagh Nak, and his descendants donated to the museum in 1879. So what do we know for sure? From India, Wagh Nak was taken and exchanged hands with British agents. Fine. So then why not return it to India forever? Nak is the property of India after all, and of Maharashtra specifically. And yet we are receiving this tiger claw weapon only for display for only 3 years. As Maharashtra state government have signed a memorandum of understanding to exhibit the Wagh Nak. But this feels like some trophy to exhibit as a charity. This belongs to India and should return. Now London, you should know, has started to share some iconic artifacts with countries of origin. This is under the long-term partnership with different nations across the world. However, this concept of sharing has received severe backlash by African groups, by Greece specifically, whose 50% of total sculptural decoration of the Parthenon is with the British. Greece is also seeking the Elgin marbles, and Nigeria the Benin bronzes. Many in India have also seen this as a cue to demand the return of India's Amaravati marbles, collection of over 120 sculptures and inscriptions housed in the British Museum in London that were recovered from the Amaravati Mahachaitya in Guntur, Andhra Pradesh presently. There are references to Buddha's life and was taken away by a civil servant, Sir Walter Elliot. There was no reason for him to take it away from India, and yet he did, and it's now placed in the British Museum. In 2018, the Ethiopian ambassador said it would not accept a loan of its heritage, and when only the full return with ownership rights and display in Ethiopian museums would be what they will call satisfactory. India, in this respect, has still done better. There are constant back and forth discussions that are taking place to get some items repatriated to India. This is no easy initiative, remember, to undertake, because we see Britain not really willing to part with their empire loot. As president of G20 group this year, India even placed the repatriation of antiquities as an agenda at the G20 leaders summit. So which are the artifacts that have returned to India from the United Kingdom? 7 artifacts have been returned or are en route India from Britain, including the Indo-Persian talwar believed to be dating 14th century, a 3-carved stone pillar fragments from 10th century temple in Kanpur, a sandstone carving of the Hindu goddess Uma or Durga, an 11th century carved stone door jamb taken from a Hindu temple in Kanpur. So much that could have even gone unrecognized. An 8th century goat-headed yogini from Uttar Pradesh was found 20 years later in Britain. Where? Kept in a private garden in England, covered in moss, till it was confirmed of its heritage and its value. This is apart from the historical items finally returned to India from the Met Museum in the United States of America. Glasgow Life, a charitable organization which runs the Scottish cities museums, signed an agreement with the Indian government to repatriate 7 stolen artifacts to India. Objects removed from temples, shrines, stolen in different states from North India during the 19th century. Also, smugglers within India got many of these statues and artifacts sold out for huge amounts of money. In total, we are expecting about 100 artifacts could be in the pipeline to be returned. Prime Minister Modi himself made this announcement.
मैं अमेरिकी सरकार का आभार करना चाहूंगा जिन्होंने हमारी इस बहुमूल्य विरासत को लौटाया है। 2016 और 2021 में भी जब मैंने अमेरिका की यात्रा की थी, तब भी कई कलाकृतियां भारत को लौटाई गई थी।
As I conclude, for now the Wagnak is only in India on a loan for 3 years, and there is a fair outrage, fact-based questions on why only a temporary share by the United Kingdom. London Museum is now acting defensive. They are stating and claiming they are unable to verify if among the 3 tiger claws this is the original one. What does that even mean? Because that has led to a full-blown political debate here in India. The opposition is asking if this is the original weapon, what is the timing and why the tiger claw is being brought now. But amid all of this, one fact remains. India is starting to demand. Demand what is ours. Demand that all of this needs to be returned. Demand that Indian heritage be acknowledged for its worth, and demand that the world knows that the British Empire looted from India more than it ever contributed to us. Thank you for watching. So the tiger claw on its way back to India, even if temporarily. But does that mean we should be pushing now for all other artifacts to be returned ASAP to India? Coming up next, what's happening in India today with Jessica Goyal.
Thank you, Pooja. Now, while slowly our artifacts are coming back to where they belong, let's also look at the bigger picture. If we look at our recent history, colonialism marks a large chunk of the 200 years of rule in India. But how do we answer the question about the difference made by British rule? Some argue that the British did infrastructural development in India with the construction of Indian railways, ports, water transport, post offices and telegraphs. But the obvious fact is that many countries have built railways without having to be colonized to do so. And the railways laid were largely for the convenience of the British, as they connected important trade centers to the ports so that they could be helped with the British export and import easily. And roads were constructed to mobilize the army within India. Let me throw back to the speech made by Tharoor at the Oxford Union.
The fact is that India was already Britain's biggest cash cow, the world's biggest purchaser of British goods and exports, and the source of highly paid employment for British civil servants. We literally paid for our own oppression.
Tharoor argues how Britain owes India's reparations for the economic and psychological decline of its people during the rule. Data suggests that India's share of the global economy was 23% when the British first arrived, but had dropped to just 4% by the time they left. We were largely self-sufficient in food crops, reared cattle, and we had a presence of fisheries. Our handicraft industries, metal and precious stones work had great reputations around the world. We were called a golden bird. In fact, some stats say that India's share of the world economy was more than 23%, more than the entire Europe put together. However, towards the end of colonial period, as calculated by the then notable estimators Dadabhai Naoroji, V.K.R.V. Rao, the aggregate growth of India between 1900 and 1950 was less than 2%. And an annual 0.5% growth in per capita output per year, and export shares fell to 2%. Many Indians died of starvation, our military was used in World War, there were mass arrests, the suppression of democratic rights, and all this calls for questioning the legacy of colonies. Even though repatriation can't heal the wounds of history, it's a welcome step, just as we see with our artifacts making a comeback to India. That's all that we have for you today. Thank you for watching.
For more informative videos like this, keep watching India Today Newsmo.